Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the recent seminar. Thank you all very much for coming along. My name is Ewan Ramsay, and I'm the Managing Director of International Resources and Recycling Institute. The recent project is part funded by the Northern Periphery and Arctic region, and we thank them very much indeed for their funding and their support. This seminar is really an opportunity for us to talk through some of the work that we've done throughout the last 3 years, really give you a bit of an insight in terms of to the aims and the objectives of the project, what we've achieved, and from my point of view, one of the key important aspects is some of the deliverables going forward once the European funding stops. So we have a range of speakers over the next hour and a half to 2 hours, and then we'd like to invite you to join us in a glass of wine and some canapes, and we can continue the conversation. So in terms of the introduction to RECENT, for me, RECENT is all about communities. The project's all about remote rural communities and how we can get them to make best use of the assets that are within their communities. It's about upskilling, it's about building capacity, and it's also taking the 5 regions across the Northern Periphery and Arctic that are involved in the project to really learn and work together so that they can all benefit going forward. The RECENT project started in 2014, but I guess my organisation and a number of the partners here today were involved in working with community groups across the Northern Periphery for many years before that. And one of the key reasons for developing RECENT was because communities saw opportunities, but they didn't quite know how to take them forward. Sometimes there was hidden opportunities lying within communities, so there might be some unused assets that they weren't aware of. They didn't know how to capitalise on that and how to get some value out of these assets. And that was really the core reason why we created and developed the RECENT application going forward. So in terms of RECENT, we've been working with 24 pilot sites across the 5 regions. The 5 regions are Northern Ireland, Ireland, the Highlands of Scotland, Finland and Sweden. And I guess the core element that brings these pilots together is that they're very fragile communities, both in terms of geographic location, in terms of population numbers. A lot of them have aging populations. They don't have as many young people who are of a working age. And we're really looking for opportunities to develop all of these communities together. So in terms of the objectives are listed up there, and it's really to maximise the opportunities through low carbon, but it's also to mitigate against some of the climate change risks that these communities face, both now and in the future. So the outputs there, 24 pilot projects, and a number of my colleagues will touch on them this evening so that you will get a flavour for some of the activities and the outputs that these pilots have been creating. So the team there, you can see they're from a number of different organisations. So my organisation is an environmental charity. We work right the way across the different elements of the environment. We have a municipality from Sweden, we have a university from Finland, we have a county council from Ireland, a social enterprise and an energy organisation as well from Northern Ireland. So we've got a wide range of knowledge and experience, both in terms of living and working within communities. So we feel it's a really nice, diverse group of organisations and people. As you can imagine, 3-year projects, lots of challenges. You put in an application to the European Commission, you tell them what you're wanting to do, but lots of things happened. Who could have imagined that Brexit would crop up partway through our project, and that's caused us some challenges. The understanding of communities is different in all of the different regions involved, and that might seem a very simple term, but for all of us to be talking on the same page, you need to understand what community means to each and every one of us. So these were some of the challenges, some of the, I call it the green landscape. So feed-in tariffs have changed in some regions quicker or at a different pace than others. And you need to take account of that throughout the whole 3-year period within the project. So we have had a number of successes. I'm not going to go into them in any great detail just now, because my colleagues will do a far better job than I. However, one element which was a big issue for me in Scotland is community groups were looking to develop renewable energy projects all over Scotland. They saw Scottish water assets within their regions, but they didn't know where to start. And they ended up talking to different people, possibly the wrong people or inappropriate elements within Scottish Water, and Recent has helped pull together some concrete policy guidance so that now any community group in Scotland knows precisely who to go and what to do to develop a community renewable project. And that's just one example, I guess, of a really tangible impact that the Recent project has had over the last 3 years. So in terms of this evening, why are you here in terms of the aims of the session? Learn how the different regions have worked together to develop different pilots and different solutions. Discover some of the tools that we've been creating and that will long live after the European funding's finished. And then understand some of the policy challenges between water and community renewable energy, and we've been trying to somehow bring them together. Okay, so you've heard enough from me. I'd like to hand over to Pierre-Emmanuel LeClerc from the European Commission, who's going to say a few words on some of the challenges that we face at the present moment. Pierre-Emmanuel.
Good evening, everybody. So my name is Pierre-Emmanuel LeClerc. I'm working at Directorate General for Regional Policy, Regional and Urban Policy. In fact, I'm the desk officer in charge of the Northern Periphery and Arctic program. I replace Joanna Kirillo, who had managed this program for a long time. By the way, I arrived in this my new unit in November, so it's quite new for me. And as I worked extensively in Spanish and in French for the 22 last years at the Commission, I must say this is my first speech in English, so I know it's never too late to begin. I'll try to reply to the question, but much more on the institutional point of view than on the sector. So, as an introduction, I can say that Europe's territory is renowned for its diversity, physical, climatic, and political. And the European project of community building and intensive political and policy cooperation across the continent has always considered this diversity to be one of its inherent advantages, strength in diversity. As the European project has progressed, so its territory has been increasingly considered as a coherent entity, where the physical and human interconnections between its places and spaces have gradually developed and strengthened. However, as pointed in the 7th report on economic, social and territorial cohesion, a polycentric pattern is evident, with capital and other metro areas being the main centers of competitiveness. Therefore, when it comes to discussing the issue of the center and the periphery in the EU, the attention focuses more on the periphery side rather than on the center, and what a group of French geographers called the blue banana. Areas facing geographical or demographic disadvantages form a very heterogeneous group, which in fact calls for a differentiated approach. We will see that firstly, cohesion policy for 2014-2020 already offers many possibilities to support and strengthen the development of these areas. Secondly, a few examples concerning islands and mountainous areas. And thirdly, a few words on the expert work launched by DG Regio on supporting and strengthening the development of islands, mountains and sparsely populated areas through EU cohesion policy. So firstly, which are the relevant articles in the cohesion policy regulations? In implementing Article 174 of the treaty, cohesion policy for 2014-2020 offers many possibilities for supporting and strengthening the development of regions with specific geographic features. The Common Provision Regulations stipulates that member states shall take account of geographic or demographic features and take steps to address the specific territorial challenges of each region to unlock their specific development potential. The 2014 and 20 legislation provides the following possibilities to address the specific needs of areas facing specific geographical or demographic disadvantages. First, the Common Provision Regulation, Annex 1, which is the Common Strategic Framework, asks the member states to ensure that the analysis and the overall approach of cohesion policy programming reflects key territorial challenges, that is urban, rural, fishery and coastal areas, urban-rural linkages, areas facing specific geographical or demographic handicaps, mountains, regions, islands, etc. Secondly, cross-sectoral, cross-jurisdictional or cross-border coordination challenges, including macro-regional and sea basin strategies. And thirdly, coordination mechanisms among the ESI funds and with other relevant policies and instruments. Second regulation, the ERDF regulation, Article 10, which requires operational programs covering areas with natural or demographic handicaps to pay particular attention to addressing the specific difficulties of these areas, including these specific areas. And finally, Article 121 of the CPR, Common Provision Regulation, which stipulates that the EU co-financing rate to a priority axis may be modulated to take account of the areas with severe and permanent natural or demographic handicaps. These are island member states are eligible under eligible under the Cohesion Fund and other islands, except those on which the capital of a member state is situated or which have a fixed link to the mainland. Mountainous areas, as defined by the national legislation of the member states, sparsely, that is less than 50 inhabitants per square kilometer, and very sparsely, less than 8 inhabitants per square kilometer populated areas. And finally, outermost regions, as referred to in Article 349 of the treaty. The method for allocating ESI funding in the programming period 2014-20 allowed taking account of the specificities of the local context. The CPR also refers to many different criteria which do not comprise GDP per head, but also population, employment, and unemployment rates, as well as educational attainment levels. So for 14-20, the ESI funds have also introduced tools for integrated territorial development strategies. These tools can be used flexibly to implement multidimensional place-based strategies, to tackle territorial challenges such as those of areas facing specific geographical or demographic disadvantages. These are the Integrated Territorial Instruments, the ITIs. Okay, maybe I'm too close to the, okay. So they are intended to package investments from more than one priority axis or of one or several programs for a territorial strategy to ensure an integrated, tailor-made approach. And the ITI is a voluntary tool under the ERDF and the ESF and Cohesion Fund, but also the EAFRD and the EMFF can contribute. And the second tool are the community-led local development, CLLD, which is a joint initiative to support bottom-up local development strategies and local public-private civil society partnerships. So the CLLD is voluntary under the ERDF, ESF, and EMF, but compulsory under the EAFRD. A few examples now, islands and mountains. For concerning the islands, the European Maritime and Fisheries Funds, EMFF, operations are implemented in remote Greek islands and in the Croatian, in a few Croatian islands, and this operation may benefit from an increase of 35% of public aid intensity over the general rule of 50%. Secondly, through rural development programs, EAFRD assists islands suffering from natural, demographic, and economic disadvantages via investment measures, support for diversifying economic activities, support for knowledge transfer and information actions, and by compensating farmers for natural and other specific constraints. Rural development programs may give higher aid intensity, up to 75%, for investments in less developed regions, outermost regions, and on smaller Aegean islands, both in agriculture and forestry. And finally, in order to mitigate the specific constraints resulting from the level of development, the remoteness and insularity, EAFRD contributions can go up to 85% of the eligible public expenditure in less developed regions, in outermost regions, and in the smaller Aegean islands within the regulation. Examples for mountains, Sweden and the United Kingdom. So in Sweden, the northern sparsely populated upper North Sweden and central North Sweden are targeted to reduce some of their natural disadvantages. The main emphasis was given on their remote northern location and their sparse population structure, but a high share of their territories belong to the Scandinavian mountains as well. Measures that improve the conditions for job shifts and increase access to business to larger and new markets are crucial for the sustainability of both regions. The operational program for Upper North Sweden mentions a challenge to ensure digital participation in the whole region, since there are areas where such possibilities are still not sufficient in quality terms. And finally, the operational program for Central North Sweden is supporting a project that is looking for methods to ensure that access to early snow can create business development models which improve the capacity of the region's businesses to supply products and services for an extended snow season. As for the United Kingdom, only the ERDF operational program for Scotland has provided for specific needs for geographical areas where tailored measures will be implemented through local diversity partnerships to identify the key needs and issues that affect growth in an area and provide access to the ESI funds to provide appropriate responses. Additional business or sectoral support will be permitted to overcome natural handicaps, notably targeted infrastructure investments to attract new growth sectors. Finally, the expert work which has been launched by DG Regio. This works try to understand how member states are using the possibilities for supporting and strengthening the development of islands, mountains and sparsely populated areas through EU cohesion policy. The objectives are to gather basic information from the partnership agreements and national, sectoral and regional operational programs, ETC programs, and macro-regional strategies about the geographical specificities identified by the member states and regions. Understand the main characteristics and trends articulated per country for each category of geographical specificity. Gather basic information regarding the different ways that each member state decided to deal with geographical specificities and so on. Identify best practice projects, map financial instruments created targeting specifically areas, and map integrated territorial tools used to tackle the development needs of areas. 6 deliverables, the last one in August this year. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pierre-Emmanuel. That was a fascinating insight. I now would like to welcome Kirsti Mijnhijmer, Head of the NPA Secretariat. We're delighted that Kirsti could be here today. And pass over to yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ewan, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here in Scotland House and to give you the context of the recent project in the Northern Periphery. I have some slides. I don't know if I need some help. Yeah, I think they are separate. Thank you. Thank you very much. So this is the Northern Periphery and Arctic Program area, and I think the picture alone says quite a lot in terms of Europe is in the bottom right-hand corner, basically. This is among the family of transnational Interact programs, the smallest in terms of funding, but by far the largest in terms of program area, and also stretching outside the EU. There are 4 regions in Norway, Iceland, Greenland and Faroes that are actually not part of the European Union, but that are putting in money of their own to participate in this cooperation. And this cooperation goes back quite a long time. Historically, of course, a very long time, but in terms of Interact, the first Northern Periphery program started in the year 2000, but before that there was even a sort of pilot project. And this program area, even though it's quite diverse, has many common features. Sparse population has been mentioned before, or as they like to say in Sweden, spacely populated people. So sparsely populated areas and very sparsely populated areas, an abundance of natural resources, but also some challenges in terms of climate change impacts, an aging population, out-migration of young people, low economic diversity, often depending on one sector or only on the public sector. But there are also many good sides to the program area. So the vision of the program is to counteract these overwhelming challenges. The program will help to generate vibrant, competitive and sustainable communities by harnessing innovation, expanding the capacity for entrepreneurship and seizing the unique growth initiatives and opportunities of the Northern Periphery and Arctic regions in a resource-efficient way. And I think mainly the sustainable community side is very much the philosophy of the program in its widest meaning, and also resource efficient, and that's where we feel that the recent project really fits in with its focus on community solutions, specifically suitable for remote and sparsely populated communities. What's also important about recent is that the capacity building, even in small communities, to have the capacity to choose the right solutions, and a specific focus on influencing policy, making use of place-based assets as well. So it fits very well with the general theme of the program. This is maybe not so easy to read, but we have 4 priority axes: innovation, entrepreneurship, renewables and energy efficiency, and the fourth one is focused on natural and cultural assets. And recent fits in with Priority Access 3, which is about generating energy secure communities and promoting the use of renewables and energy efficiency, specifically for public infrastructures and housing. And to give you an impression, we have currently 5 projects ongoing in the program. Reason was the first one we approved in this priority access, so it's the one that's the furthest along, also with its solutions. And we're happy to see that one of the most recent projects, the LeClerc project, will take over some of the solutions developed in the recent project. So there's also sort of securing the legacy of the project. And that's really all I wanted to say for now. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Kirsti. I think that hopefully puts it into a little bit of context in terms of the work that we've been doing for the last 3 years, how it fits into the overall vision of the Northern Periphery and Arctic programme, which is very important from our perspective. I'd now like to pass on to Craig Egner from Scottish Government, and Craig's going to just say a few words in terms of Scottish Government and the hydronation policy, and probably best hand over to Craig, and he can do a far better job than I could.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Craig.
Just press this down.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much indeed, Ewan. Good evening all. I'm Craig Egner. I'm the Scottish Government's European Energy Advisor. I'm based here in Brussels, in Scotland House, so I want to bid you my own personal welcome to Scotland House this evening. It's a busy week for the Scottish Government this week. We are right in the middle of Sustainable Energy Week at the moment. This is the 13th Sustainable Energy Week that the European Commission has hosted. We've had government officials this week speaking at the high-level policy conference, which is happening just over the road in the Charlemagne building. They've been talking about everything from electric mobility to the energy transition and the role of states, regions and subnational actors in that process. But I'm particularly pleased to say that on Monday we also had our own Energy Minister here in this very room, Paul Wellhouse, and he was chairing a series of energy roundtables talking very much about the energy transition. Now, why do I mention that? Well, it was a big day for us. It was very good to get him here. But what really struck me about his appearance here was his core message throughout the event was that whatever the future holds, and I'm not going to talk about Brexit this evening, but whatever the future holds, we're determined as a government to remain on the energy map, the collaborative energy map in Europe. The Minister made much of collaborating across the EU, but not just in the EU and beyond. Why? Developing networks to share best practice, to share expertise, to promote policy exchange. And that helps us in Scotland, that helps us refine and develop our own policy in a whole range of areas that's within energy, but of course and beyond. So I think what was really good about this event this evening is that puts that principle into practice. Recent is a really good example of how, and we're going to cover this later, how we are sharing best practice and how we're sharing policy knowledge so that we can help one another develop, presumably. I was also struck by the fact that this programme draws on the Northern Periphery and Arctic programme. That's something we've some experience of in Scotland. But the programme, and I was very pleased to hear you talk about it, it's very relevant to the strategic partnerships that we're looking to forge as a Scottish Government, both within the EU and beyond. As you said, there are partners who are involved in this who are not in the EU. It's very relevant to the work we're doing to build partnerships with our Nordic colleagues. Last year we refreshed our Nordic and Baltic policy statement, which is on our website, but I'm very happy to share that with anyone who would like to see it. And we're getting more and more involved in Arctic issues as well, because we think there is a lot of scope to collaborate with Arctic partners on shared issues and on shared challenges, particularly but not exclusively on energy. It covers a whole raft of areas. So I'm very pleased that for the last 2 years running, we've had our First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, participate in the Arctic Assembly in Reykjavik, Iceland. We hosted our first ever Arctic Forum in Edinburgh last year as well. So that's a bit of context as to why this is all very important for us. Importantly, I wanted to really use my time here to say a few words in support of this project, to congratulate all the partners who've been involved in it on the progress that you've all made. We have been very pleased to support the project. It's an excellent fit with hydronation strategy, which I'm just going to talk very briefly about shortly. But I did want to offer an apology to you, because our expert in this field from our water industry team, Barry Gregg, who I guess many of you will know, couldn't be here today. So unfortunately, you've got me instead. But he does send his best wishes and his thanks to all of you. So if I can move on to the next slide. I just wanted to talk very briefly about hydronation and about why the work that you're doing through the recent project is a very good fit with hydronation. What is it? In a nutshell, it places a statutory duty on Scottish ministers to develop our water resource in a responsible and a sustainable way. In the UK, we probably have about 90% of the resource. That's a fantastic thing to have, but it also brings its own management challenges as well. And hydronation and the statutory obligation of the government is all about growing, of course, the economic value of the water asset, but just as importantly, it's about the non-economic value. In other words, not simply the potential to contribute to our economy, which is important through the economic activity that we undertake, but also developing the contribution that water resources make to our well-being and our quality of life, and doing that in a way and managing our resource in a sustainable way. So it means taking action to develop the value of the natural water abundance in Scotland. It's host to, as I've said, the overwhelming majority of our freshwater resources. And it means as well looking at ways at improving the productivity of our water industry, particularly through better processes, improved management, support for greater innovation, and to help to bring those new technologies from where they are now right through to market, and reduce treatment interventions and ultimately the costs for consumers. So my second and final slide is really just setting out where we see this project fitting in with our hydronation work and why it's so relevant to our work. It's not difficult to see why it fits so well with the broad aims, because this is all about energy or water as an energy asset, taking measures to improve water efficiency, taking measures to reduce the energy we use to manage our water, and that's including treating our water. That's very much part of the energy efficiency agenda. I've been really struck this week at the various events that I've been at, commission hosted and otherwise, the extent to which energy efficiency is now moving front and centre of this energy debate. And indeed at the opening ceremony yesterday, Tuesday, it was a key theme in the European Investment Bank's presentation, very much focused on how you maximise energy efficiency measures as part of this energy transition going forward. But it's just as importantly, it's about generating more of our energy from water while ensuring that we protect and enhance our environment through good governance and good practice. We're a very rural nation. A lot of people live in the Central Belt, but huge set of rural issues and challenges for us. It's a key challenge given our demographics. We have a single public-owned water utility. They're called Scottish Water, who many of you will know. And they share a duty across the public sector to support rural communities and to support rural development. So that's why we keenly support projects like RECENT, with its aims of increasing capacity and the resilience of rural communities to develop solutions that are appropriate to their local circumstances for the generation of locally produced energy. In many rural communities, water assets can help provide part of the answer. And we're grateful to all also to the close collaboration involvement of our colleagues from Scottish Water, who are not here this evening, as well as Highlands and Islands Enterprise, which many of you know, and Local Energy Scotland. As I said at the very start, I mean, we know a lot of this work is about knowledge exchange, that the project is supporting policy and knowledge exchange. That is absolutely crucial in our view for this project and any of the others that we support. Connecting communities across the MP area to learn from our diverse experiences and to learn from one another, hopefully not make the same mistakes and develop accordingly. So it's about growing understanding, and ultimately it's about strengthening communities. And I haven't seen it yet, but I applaud the innovation of the Virtual Learning Centre. I really think that's a great innovation that's been established by the project, and I think that we should be promoting that as a key output of the project going forward. So, in closing, we're grateful for the policy insights that have been developed and shared with government and our partners and our fellow stakeholders. We're looking forward very much to the final report with interest, and that will help us consider how we shape water policy in Scotland going forward. Lastly, I do know you and my spot was billed as covering the co-management of energy and water community assets. I haven't really touched on that, but I haven't done that because I know you're going to see a film later that describes what this can mean in practice in Scotland, and I think that film will be far more eloquent in its description than I could be. So I just want to close by thanking you all. I can't stay for the whole evening. I do apologise for that. I have to go quite shortly. I wanted to thank Ewan Ramsay in particular for his help and his assistance and the considerable effort that he's put into making this project a reality and a success, and indeed to all project partners and to all stakeholders. So with that, I shall close. Thank you very much, and I do wish you a productive evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Craig. Much appreciated. We go from Scotland over to the west coast of Ireland now, and I'd like to introduce Conrad Harley from Mayo County Council, and Conrad's going to give you a bit of a flavour for some of the work that the recent projects had in County Mayo. Conrad.
Thanks, Ewan. I was glad to hear Kirsti talking about the two key words that the recent project is bringing through, which is like sustainability. And I hope in my talk I'll try and explain how it's sustainability and the viability of either both the communities and in both the renewable energy projects, and how this all works together. So I'll just give you an overview of Ireland and how Mayo County Council fits in. In Ireland we have 320,000 people served from private water supplies. In Mayo we have 40,000 people supplied from private water supplies. This developed back from a policy back in the 1950s, almost mirroring the electrification of Ireland, where it was about bringing piped water supply to all the houses, and where the public sector developed and they caught the large communities in the towns and the cities, the rural water policy developed and they brought the piped water supply. Back in the 50s it was about getting as many houses as possible with piped water supply. Now we're into getting quality water supply, and it's all about ensuring that that water that we're supplying is quality water. These local group water schemes that were set up are rural water supplies. They range in all sizes, typically from 20 houses up to 2,000 homes and farms. They come together and they form cooperatives. And in order to make sure they're viable, they require exchequer support for both their capital works and for their ongoing operational works. These supplies are supplying drinking water to the rural communities, which are historically not public water supplies. So rural water challenges, what's ahead of us? As I said, they're located in sparsely populated areas, or in Sweden, spacely populated areas, as Kirsti talked about. They're primarily on the western coastal counties, and I'll show you a map later on where you'll see the majority of them are on the western coast. And they're typically located in the extremities of the electrical network. There are areas of low employment, low economic activity. They have difficulty maintaining financial sustainability, and they're generally all volunteer-led organisations. So the renewable energy solutions and what they have ahead of them, there's the obvious solar, wind, hydro, And then there's constant improvements in battery technology, and that has really opened up the scope for using renewable energies out in these communities. And the battery technology is developing really, really fast, and even the duration of this project, it has transformed the use of how the solar wind can come into these local communities. It's a good fit, renewable energy and rural water. It's a constant energy demand versus a constant energy supply. It's bringing a security of the supply to the rural communities and a security of the demand for the renewable energy sector. It's increasing the sustainability and the viability for both the rural communities and for the renewable energy. And rural communities have the available land to facilitate renewable energy projects, and they're geographically suited to take on these projects. Now, co-managing the energy and water assets, you're getting the buy-in of the local communities to support the renewable energy projects. It's a positive support for the renewable energy project, which is less objections from the community and less of NIMBYism of not in my back door. It's a positive it's a positive impact to the water asset, where it's a secure and sustainable supply, and rural communities can provide the favourable conditions to the various renewable energy solutions. So I'm going to go through a worked example of how one of these is working in Mayo, and we're going to talk about the Turin Ahamore Group Water Scheme. This is two villages, Turin and Ahamore, located on the east coast of Mayo. You can just see the map and you can see the red dot. Mayo is the lighter yellow shaded area, so it's on the east side of the county. Between the two villages there's approximately 670 domestic connections, population of 1,100 people. So the system that we're proposing to put in this village is their current water system that they have in the village is a natural spring that rises up, and all the water that's treated is pumped up to a reservoir. So they have fairly heavy energy bills, and typically which range about €12,500 per year. So our proposed system is 177 PV panels producing 28,000 kilowatt hours per annum, with three-phase inverters with an 18 kilowatt battery pack. Now it's a small battery pack because it's pumping 18 hours a day, so most of the energy that's used is used straight away. There's not that much storage required. The battery system will be charged by the PV panels, and the stored energy will be distributed when the pumps are needed. The total area for this is 260 square metres, and the system will provide about 30% of the daytime energy use. So this is a graphic taken off Google Earth. Is there a laser on this? Okay, the green buildings you see in the bottom, that's the spring housed in a shed, internal shed, and there's a little building below it where the treatment system is and where the pumps are to pump it up. And the area shaded in blue is how the PV panels fit in. So not that obtrusive, and they're right beside where they're used. Payback. Calculations are showing that the payback in this is about 8.5 years. And where I think this will fit in better and it will work, I talked earlier how there's a strong investment needed from the government, and at the moment it's all about water quality, and it's about ensuring that the water that the people are drinking meets all the quality standards. But if small amounts of the overall grant aid is focused more in this area, it will allow these projects to be funded, and will leave the whole area in a much more sustainable and viable nature. So the future. This pilot has shown that there is potential in co-managing renewable energy in the rural water sector. It can be replicated on many other schemes, particularly on schemes where the water is all pumped. The treated water has to be pumped up to a reservoir for a gravity supply. We've investigated through in the schemes in Mayo, and we're seeing about 35% of these schemes are perfectly suitable for this. The 35% that we're talking about here are the schemes that there's large energy bills, so there's large savings to be achieved. But there's savings to be achieved on every scheme in their energy use, but just to a lesser potential. The potential for the use of renewable energy in this sector cannot be underestimated. The rural water sector certainly isn't. It's quite similar. Scotland is coming together on theirs, and they have a lot of projects, and they're probably a small bit. In Ireland we have a national federation of group water schemes, and we've been working with those, and we're just a small bit ahead, but there's lessons to be learned and there's benefits to be got across all the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So hopefully that sets the scene and gives a little bit of context. We're now going to move on to 5 pilots in 5 regions. So we'll start off with Northern Ireland. And if I could ask Michael Doran, the Chief Executive of Action Renewables, to say a few words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes about the pilots and about what we did in Northern Ireland. First of all, we had difficulty getting communities to buy into the recent project. There are fundamental reasons why we have that issue. Craig was talking earlier on about the commitment of the Scottish Government both to renewable energy and to community energy. There are 10 separate Scottish community support programmes for renewable energy. When we started the programme in Northern Ireland with Recent, there was 1. And within 6 months of Recent starting, there weren't any. So one of the issues, and my colleague Aaron will be talking about this a little bit later on, one of the issues with community renewable energy is that it can't survive in a political vacuum. And that's something I'm going to talk a little bit about later on. So we tried hard at an early stage to try and get engagement from communities. But one of the things you'll be aware of is it's difficult for communities to access funding through normal funding streams. So unless there is some kind of government commitment or some other mechanism to support them, it's very difficult for them to get projects over the line. One of the projects that we did get, and this developed into 2 of our pilots, was a thing called Ballymena Clusters. So this was a community group which had been funded by the local authority, by the municipality, but the municipality had not said specifically what the money was for. They had given them an allocation of £250,000 sterling and anticipated that the community group, Ballymena Clusters, would probably use it for something like job creation. But what they saw an opportunity was to actually make a project which was going to give revenue back into the community over time. And that's actually been very successful. Some of you will be aware about an issue in Northern Ireland that has actually brought the government down. Recent started in October of 2015, and at that time there was a scheme running in Northern Ireland called the Renewable Heat Incentive. For lots of reasons that I don't have time to go into now, because that would take about 30 minutes all on its own, there was a political fallout because the person who had been the Minister for Energy at the time that this scheme was created ended up as our First Minister. There were then accusations that there had been mismanagement in her department when this scheme was set up. So in January of 2016, the government in Northern Ireland fell because of a renewable incentive, because of a renewable scheme. We're now 18 months later and we don't have that back. So what I want to talk about, another thing, the main support programme for renewable electricity across the UK, including Scotland and in Northern Ireland, has been a scheme called ROCS, the Renewable Obligation Scheme. Now that scheme terminated completely in March of 2017. So right at the moment in Northern Ireland, not only is there no support mechanism for community groups to engage within renewable energy projects, there is no funding of any description whatsoever. Now, I'm not saying that there has to be government funding forever to support renewable energy. And as renewable energy technologies mature, the way in which governments support and the mechanisms that they put in change over time. But I would argue now is not the time in Northern Ireland to have no policy support. I wrote down something Craig said earlier on. We are determined to stay on the shared energy map. Well, that's something that is not happening within Northern Ireland. At the moment, there is no policy being developed for renewable energy, and renewable energy is seen as a dirty word. There's a perception that renewable energy, A, doesn't work. The people who have put it in have benefited from it to the detriment of everybody else in the country, and that we've gone as far as we can with renewable energy, and we're not really going to go any further. When I first started working on renewable energy about 18 or 19 years ago, I used to go across and do a lot of work in Scotland with the machinery rings. And it was interesting that they're a form of cooperative. It's a way that it supports farmers. At that time, Northern Ireland was well ahead of Scotland in renewable energy policy development. Northern Ireland is now way behind most of Europe and certainly way behind Scotland. The way in which government develops policy is very important. Now, this cascades down into things like the way in which NPA projects can deliver, because they come from political initiatives. But at the moment within Northern Ireland, we have no political leadership. We've had no government for 18 months. There's no policy being developed, and it's a very difficult situation. Now, Recent has done some good work in Northern Ireland, but at the moment, if Recent 2 was to be set up tomorrow, I don't see how it could be successful in Northern Ireland in a policy vacuum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I guess that's a very good example when I talked at the beginning to set the scene where there's some challenges happen when you deliver a 3-year project. Most, if not all, of the challenges that Michael have highlighted, they weren't on our radar when we put the application in, and that's not lack of foresight. That's just the way that the world works sometimes, unfortunately. So we now pass on to Finland. We have Sari Pipo from the University of Oulu, who would like to share some experiences with the Finnish pilot.
Okay, hello everybody. As Ewan said, I'm Sari Pipo from University of Oulu, Finland, and I like to present you some nice pilot case from Finland. I think this is a really interesting case, so very recent one in recent project, and this is Triangle Travel Center, and this will be built in on the shore of Hämeenjärvi Lake. And the interesting case is that at the moment this place is a cattle farm. There is 170 cattle at the moment, and the number of cattle will be reduced to maybe 50 cattle, and there will be still some field areas that will be used for energy crop and feed production. And the idea of this travel center is that it will be the destination to enjoy silence and foster creativity. And the plan is to build a 4-star hotel and in addition 20 wooden cottages. Hopefully you can see it from this map. So there is lake in here. There will be new hotel in here and 20 cottages in here. So, so that there will be plenty of new buildings, and the idea what we were doing in recent project, that we were thinking about the energy solutions that would produce renewable energy to this travel center. And this renewable energy solution would be photovoltaic solar rooftop photovoltaic system and also a biogas plant. So those solar PV tiles would be on the roofs of the hotel building itself, the new one, big one, and also on the roof of the cottages and the barn. The system would be of 240 kilowatt peaks, and it would cover up to 40% of the hotel system's energy needs. The estimation is that the cost of roofing and installation itself would be something about 500,000. And it's calculated that the payback time, if there will be state subsidy, would be something about 20 years. So these are not typical solar panels, but they are like these tiles. So they are look like typical tiles on the roofs. So not like, they do not like typical solar panels. And other energy solution would be a biogas plant. And the great idea of this is that the input materials would be from the farm and hotels itself. So they would be like food waste from the hotel and restaurants, and then manure from the cows, and also energy crops that they would grow in those fields. There would be 3 parallel reactors, and total volume would be 345 cubic meters. And this biogas would be used to generate heat and also electricity. And it can be, this solution could be able to provide 60% of the energy needs of the whole travel center. And it's estimated that investment costs for this solution would be something like 400,000 euros, and the payback time would be something about 8.5 years. So as you can see, these both solutions together could provide good amount of the energy that this travel center would need. And I think this was all of this case. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sari. And I think you get a sense that we're only 2 regions in, 2 very different sets of circumstances in terms of the pilots. And I'd now like to ask Karina Denigan from Bord na Mór to come and tell us about some of the experiences in Ireland. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Firstly, on behalf of Bord na Mór, I'd like to thank CLAR ICH and all the recent partners for giving us the opportunity to present to you this evening. Today, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our kind of flagship project, Mount Lucas Wind Farm, the challenges, how we've incorporated community engagement and community empowerment into the project, and the lessons that we've learned from it. So, just an overview of Mount Lucas Wind Farm. In 2011, Bord na Mór submitted planning to An Bord Pleanála, which would be Ireland's planning board, for the construction of a large-scale wind farm on cutaway peatland in the Midlands of Ireland in County Offaly. Work started on the site in 2013, and by 2014 the company had installed 28 Siemens turbines of 3 megawatts each. So it is a large-scale wind farm. The turbines are 150 metres in height from ground to blade, or blade tip height. It's on 1,100 hectares of cutaway peatland, and every year it's powering over 50,000 homes in Ireland. But of course, like all large-scale infrastructure projects, it was not without its challenges, and the local community had genuine concerns about such a large-scale infrastructure project coming into their area. However, Bord na Mór was conscious and wanted to ensure that communities would have a sustainable benefit from the wind farm in the long term. So as part of the planning application for the wind farm, they had submitted in their application that they would provide an annual community benefit fund of €1,000 per megawatt annually to the community. So the company consulted with the community of how best this scheme should be structured. They wanted to ensure that there was community empowerment in deciding how the fund would be run, who would administer it, and what projects would and wouldn't benefit from it. So after a series of consultation events with the community, it was decided that the fund would belong to the community. They would decide where the money went, what projects were supported annually, and the only role that we would have in it would be the administration of it, so seeking applications and ensuring that applications were paid on time. So as a result, each of our wind farms since then now has a local committee made up of community representatives who decide where best the funds should go. So this is just an image of our Mount Lucas wind farm group, many of the projects that have benefited from it. So since 2014, the company has contributed over €500,000 to the region, supporting over 150 projects based on a number, and they must meet a number of thematic areas from amenities, community facilities, culture, heritage, education and recreation and health. And we also support the local group water scheme, as Conrad touched on in detail, explaining them a few minutes ago. These are just examples of some of the projects that have been supported, local athletic tracks, the upgrading of community facilities, and a key one would be the support of the local group water scheme. So we started out with them and through CLAR ICH having a number of workshops with the community groups to help build capacity within the area, and also provide information to them on other funds that are available so they can leverage as much funds as possible to support them in their projects. So the first steps with the local rural water scheme was to conserve energy, or to conserve water, and to make sure the scheme was running effectively. So through the scheme, they've upgraded their entire system in the area. It helped to increase the detection of leaks, and it actually helped them reduce their consumption from 370 metres cubed to 170 metres cubed daily. And we'd hope that in the future the next steps would be to look at how we can incorporate renewable energy into the running of the scheme to help them reduce the annual cost of it and to go that bit further. But as we move on through our projects, a lot of the community groups that we work with, and we're constantly engaging with them, have fed back that although this scheme is wonderful and it's great and it supports all the initiatives, they'd also like benefits for the households that live directly beside our projects. So in December 2017, we launched what we are calling our Near Neighbour scheme. So this will benefit houses that live within a certain distance of a turbine at Mount Lucas wind farm. So again, the scheme was designed through consultation with the local community of what exact benefit they'd like and how they'd like it to be administered. So the main benefit that the residents would have liked to see would be a contribution towards the annual electricity costs. So again, through a number of workshops and that, we came up with a model that kind of incorporated 4 elements. So there's the electricity discount, which will go towards the household. There's also a once-off contribution to improve the energy efficiency of their home, which will enable them to reduce their electricity costs. So through CLAR ICH, we've also done workshops on energy efficiency with the residents in that particular area. And as we continue to roll out the scheme, then workshops will be ramped up. And CLAR ICH have also brought along the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland to them workshops to educate the local people on other grants that are available, again to help people extract as much benefit as they can and as much as the grants and facilities that are available to them. If the homeowner already has an energy efficiency home, particularly the newer homes, they have the opportunity that they can use the energy efficiency contribution towards the purchase of an electric car down the road. And then also the company will facilitate the support of educational grants for local people as well, because we believe that education is very important. But it's not all about monetary contributions to the local area. We are conscious that when we bring our large-scale wind farms, there is huge amenity access potential. And again, this is all about community empowerment. This is our weekly park run. It's just a picture of it that happens at the wind farm. So this is where the local member of the local community came to us and asked, could they use our facilities to hold the weekly park run? So every Saturday morning around 9 o'clock, there's over 60 people out there every week doing the 5-kilometre run. So the amenity has proven to be a huge success. So every year since it opened, we're 2 years now with the amenity facility, and there's over 30,000 people every year using the facility to walk, run, cycle. But we also try and involve the community as much as possible in the wind farm. We recently constructed our Mount Lucas wind farm visitor facilities, and that facilities brings in a number of guest visitors, school kids, to educate them on renewable energy and energy efficiency. So over the last 2 years, again, that's been hitting over 3,000 people every year that have come through that facility. And the facility then is also available free of charge to the community to use for their events. Again, this December, for the first time, Santa visited Mount Lucas Wind Farm, and the aim of that was to raise money for the local St. Vincent de Paul facility. So it was the community basically supporting the St. Vincent de Paul, because many of the people that attended were from the area and brought their kids to see Santa, and that was a great success. It raised over 400 or over 4,000 for Vincent de Paul at Christmas time. We also try and involve the local schools at events that we're having at the site and stuff. So the picture in the corner there was the local school during the opening of the facility, where they came along to be the choir and sing for the day. We're on a learning curve always with our projects, and we're currently going through the planning stage with a number of other projects, and we hope to bring our lessons learned from Mount Lucas through to our future projects. And I suppose the key lessons we learned, that early and ongoing community engagement is key. The provision of information to communities, so the likes of third-party funding information, is essential to help them achieve their projects and to ensure that they're delivered on budget, on time, and for the benefit of the community. Capacity building was a major success for us, which was facilitated by CLAR ICH. And again, the energy awareness training and mentoring programme is crucial to ensure that communities have empowerment and can extract as much benefit as they can from our renewable energy projects. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina. And I guess it was striking to note that the lessons learned out of the Mount Lucas wind farm very much mirror the objectives of the recent project in terms of communication with the communities, in terms of training, capacity building, and developing a bit of a knowledge exchange. So thank you very much. So I'll now pass over to Silva Herman from Jokkmokk municipality in Sweden. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Silva Herman, working as a project manager at the Jokkmokk municipality, and we were talking a lot about kind of sparsely populated regions, and that we are. We have 0.3 inhabitants per square kilometer, so that's really sparsely populated, but we are there. There are people. So, what did we do? One of our pilot projects, which I'm proud of, is our local district heating system. And I think you guys know what district heating is. But I'm not so sure that you were thinking too much about the substations or the heat exchangers and how you can make them more efficient. We didn't either. Not too much in the past, but now we do. What we realized during the recent project is that our district heating plant is running to 99% on bioenergy, and we are pretty proud of that. But we had a lot of energy efficiency potential. And this is only a part of the work we are doing, but I find it specifically interesting. We were looking into the cooling performance of the heat exchangers. And you see, if you do not extract the heat you are delivering in the pipelines, you need to pump a lot of water. And another point, we have a flue gas condensation, which extracts the heat from the flue gas. But for making that more efficient, you need to have as low temperature in the return water as possible. So even there it's important that you extract as much heat as you can. If your substations or heat exchangers, which are in the facilities you are heating with a district heating, are not able to extract the heat, not to lower the temperature, then they're just not efficient. What we did basically is, and that's I think a key lesson and a reason why projects like recent are needed in regions like ours. We had the possibility to just have educated staff prioritizing work like that for just making these substations more efficient, which led to that we have a less fuel demand on the one hand, that we have reduced pipeline losses on the other hand. And that's not a huge project as such when it comes to the investments. It's a little bit of materials if you need to fix something in the heat exchangers. It's mostly about the labor cost. You need to have staff in place who's able to prioritize its work, to know what to do, and to fix the things. But actually, that is a very, very profitable project with a payback time less than 1 year. And actually, it's also better service for the customers. As I said in the beginning, our biomass, our district heating is running on bioenergy. So the question is a little bit, okay, that's already renewable. What does it matter? And I think it matters a lot. Forests are really an important resource that we have, and we need to use it as efficient as possible. In our region, we have the only European indigenous peoples, and they are in need of old forests for the reindeers. And if we extract all the wood locally from all of our forests, from everywhere, there's no space for them. So by making our bioenergy plant more efficient, we are contributing not only to environmental targets, we are also delivering on aspects like social and issues and human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silva. Much appreciated. And we now go on to Scotland, and I'm going to cheat slightly here, because if the technology works, I've got a short video to show you. Far more interesting than listening to me. But we've got, that's Loch Ness, the largest loch in Scotland, well known to a lot of you. And this is a project that is just on the banks of Loch Ness, and it's in a little village called Drumnadrochit, which is a very Scottish Highland name. And we'll see if the video works, and then that'll tell you all about it.
We're here in Glenurquhart in Drumnadrochit, which is the main village in the area. The Glenurquhart Rural Community Association, or GURCA, has existed for over 50 years and represents the community of Glenurquhart, which is about 3,000 people. Within this community, there's all sorts going on, like shinty, Highland Games, a heritage group, a horticultural group, art groups meet in the village hall, there's Pilates. The community has got really behind us in terms of the vision for creating a community action plan. We've not even kicked that work off properly yet, and we probably have a list of about 60 different projects that people have come up with that they'd like to see happen, and I think that's a demonstration of community buy-in. The Rural Association isn't doing this on its own. It has come together to form a steering group with the Community Council, with the Chamber of Commerce here, and with Sorvis, who are our local charity who disperse funds from renewable energy projects.
Local Energy Scotland put out a call last year to look at communities, well, to ask communities to come forward to take part in a pilot local energy plan project. Jokkmokk put forward a proposal, and on the back of that we were selected as one of the 4 communities to take part in the pilot. And I think that proves the point that Jokkmokk is at the stage where it's being recognised as being a community that's looking forward and wanting to address its energy issues.
One of the really interesting ideas we have is using energy that's created from our local wastewater plant and transferring the heat that's generated from that to actually heat some of our local buildings. The feasibility for that project has been funded by the European project, looking at ideas for using existing assets to create energy. The heat that's generated right here in Jokkmokk, use that excess heat to heat our village hall and also our daycare centre for the elderly and vulnerable.
Jokkmokk is being very forward thinking and starting to recognise that it could make itself more sustainable. I think it's been quite creative, and it's seen this opportunity of the energy plan as a chance to feed that into various other, like our community plan, and looking forward to make the community more sustainable.
I think the funding we got for the feasibility study for the waste to heat project has really stimulated debate in this community. It has given them the chance to think about a novel type of technology. What it has also done is acted as a catalyst for people to start thinking about other novel ways of using energy, and things like, can we take excess heat from Loch Ness and use that somehow? So the funding for this small feasibility study really has far bigger consequences than we ever could have imagined when we started it. I think it's really exciting to be involved in a community association, especially just now. The time is right for communities to come together with the Community Empowerment Act being in place, and being able to work with the community and try and harness all the ideas they have is really exciting. And I think that people feel a lot of satisfaction about being able to get those ideas out on the table and actually seeing something being done about them.
So that hopefully gives you a bit of a sense for some of the work that we've done with that community on the banks of Loch Ness. So that gives you a flavour, 5 different pilot projects, 1 in each of the 5 regions. There are information outside, so when you're having a glass of wine and having a nibble afterwards, you can read a little bit more detail in terms of all of the 20 plus pilots that we've been working on throughout the last 3 years. So I'd like to now introduce Professor Eva Pongracz from the University of Oulu, who's going to really share a bit of an overview in terms of some of the outcomes and the results that we've had across all of our pilot projects. Eva.
Thank you, Ewan, very much. So it is my pleasure to present you about the sustainability results we have done in the project. We are Energy and Environmental Engineering Research Unit, so this is really what we do. It was very important for us to work in this project. So talking about the sustainability of the project, we really have to go a little bit back to the definition of sustainability. There are two key elements, if you consider. They are the elements of the needs, what need to be provided, and the element of limitations. Can we provide this need now and also in the future? So how does that reflect to our project? Well, in terms of needs, we were mainly addressing energy, being an energy project in the Energy Directive. So energy is a fundamental human right. It's to provide modern energy services to all is one of the Sustainable Development Goals, actually. And in European perspective, to have a safe and efficient transmission and distribution system of energy and electricity is really fundamental and very important for Europe and Europeans to provide continued success, both economic and also social success, and to improve the daily life of the citizens. And this issue is in particularly even more challenging in our northern and sparsely populated regions. In particular, the demand for electricity is growing through this energy transition process. We are going more to electrification of the transport. We are using more for space heating, for example, for heat pumps. They have electricity needs, or we start to have more of these smart communities, smart energy communities, which also kind of need to have more access to electricity. At the same time, the whole Europe, we want to reduce our dependency on imported energy. In many of the regions what we are working with already are quite a lot dependent on energy of outside regions. So all of these are very important. In terms of competitiveness, of course, for European perspective is very important to be competitive, but for our regions as well, to improve our competitiveness. So many of these issues, they are European needs and European perspectives, but these are even more important, actually more challenging for our northern sparsely populated regions. In terms of limitations, of course, there is the environmental limitation, the need to reduce CO2 emissions and to halt global warming as far as possible. It's also a health issue. You probably have heard about it, that air pollution in particular is causing millions of excess deaths. And even in Europe, it is a problem, especially the small particulates, which have some health benefit. As Silva mentioned, even from burning renewable energy, that even has some health impact. So saving energy is always makes sense. And of course, we have made some commitment to satisfy the agreement, the Paris Agreement. In terms of technology, when we are moving to more intermittent sources, such as solar or wind, it provides some added challenges as well, because it's not always windy or not necessary. We have the enough solar output when we have the highest need for energy, for example, in the evenings. And also Europe-wide, the problem is the aging infra, or actually in some of our regions, lack thereof. There is not necessarily even the infra, and we need massive investment into both improving the infra and in building new infra, and also kind of entering this new trans-European energy market, which is still yet only forming. And basically, to have this energy system which is matching all the social needs of the 21st century, of this, all of you with your smart devices and phones. I mean, sometimes it is said that, you know, if William Bell would come here, he would not recognize the modern kind of the mobile system or the telephone systems. But in terms of the electricity, it hasn't changed that much actually since its inception. So we need to kind of step up and bring to the 21st century as well. Now, what we have conducted is sustainability assessments of all of these projects. Sustainability assessment is gaining really importance, mainly in policy making and also in kind of making decisions based on the sustainability of projects, to move from, if you're considering that the economic, social and environmental issues are evaluated separately, that we choose solutions where slowly kind of we merge them together. So we have a solution which is both environmentally, economically and socially sustainable and beneficial. So it is multidisciplinary from this point of view that we look all of these aspects in particular, and it is becoming really quite a common practice for product and service evaluation. So this is what we have been doing. We have selected our own sets of indicators. As you see, they are mainly environmental and social indicators, and it is pretty much reflecting those needs and limitations that I mentioned in terms of sustainability. The needs to provide for the citizen, to impact the social, their health. We find it important to have that it teaches sustainable values. So you engage the community, they are part of it, they learn it, they understand it. The community impact as such, so not just individually, but community issues and energy security, as mentioned, to have less dependence on imported energy. And of course, in terms of the environmental issues, some of the limitations, as mentioned, climate change, CO2 reduction, impact on environment in general. But one key issue with the project brought in time and again is the synergy advantages, what we wanted to look at. So we put it in this radar diagram and we evaluated for all of these projects. Now this is the numbers. If you just go to the numbers, we have engaged some 30 plus communities all through the project, and we explored 42 different pilots, of which we have assessed 25. So we made the sustainability assessment, we made feasibility studies, we made assessments of 25 of these, and we are fairly positive or hopeful that up to 19 of these is actually going to be realized, and thankfully quite a lot. Recent has made a real impact in that. 7 of them are synergistic solutions, as we promised, that we are going to look into synergies, waste to energy, particular waste heat recovery, and also looking at the energy-water nexus, which especially our Irish partners brought forward. Energy efficiencies, of course, it's part of the program's objective, so we've been looking into that as well, both energy saving and energy action plans. In terms of the energy technologies, as you can see, actually, solar photovoltaic is the highest number, 7 out of these 25. Wind, some biogas, and energy saving solutions. The rest, water conservation, microhydro, ground source heat pumps, it's a bit less, so quite varied. Many different types of technology solutions, so which is very nice, because these feasibility studies and sustainability assessment that we made can be used as a blueprint, and indeed that's what we hope. That's why we made so thorough assessment, that it can be used as a blueprint and to learn from it for future projects. So preliminary results, just number results, are the renewable energy generation potential is somewhere close to 16 gigawatt hours, which let's say about 800 households, the yearly consumption. The CO2 emissions reductions is some 5.7 kilotons per year, which is about 1,500 cars yearly consumption. The investment need is quite high, 10 million altogether. The average investment being 60,000 with a wide range between 800 euros to 3 million, depending if there was like an energy efficiency, small investment to building a windmill, which is rather expensive, or a district heating network, which is an extremely expensive business. Payback time in average is 10 years, which is not so bad. Somewhere 1 to 20, as you can see, some of these pilots for the payback time up to 20 years. But I would caution you to judge the project only by these numbers. These are the calculable numbers, but they are tremendous amount of qualitative benefits, especially the social benefits. What was mentioned, the community outreach projects, or working with small communities, and what we have heard from the video as well, to provide knowledge, to provide awareness, to help move forward and even consider the needs of local the indigenous communities. So there are tremendous amount of such social benefits which cannot be quantified. So that's why we need the sustainability assessment, that we look all of these issues in concert. So some of the key messages is solar is actually surprisingly, being an Arctic program, it's actually pretty much a viable issue, especially if it's combined for storage, what was mentioned also from the iron. It starts to be really a self-sufficient solution if you combine it with some smart controls. Support systems are indispensable for these communities, and I'm not talking only about money, although even a small amount of money just to make a feasibility study goes a long way, but just to encourage, to help, to sit down, to provide some awareness, they are also very, very important. There is still a tremendous wind potential in the region, but there are numerous challenges some of the communities have faced. For example, in Northern Ireland, what you mentioned, some kind of community resistance, for example, for these issues. There were surprisingly few projects dealing with heat pumps or in general heating issues. 2 to 3 projects we deal with heating. I think this is something, especially considering the region, it has to be considered more, the heating needs of houses, public buildings, because it's a sizable energy need as well. Well, it's almost passé. Energy efficiency is the low-hanging fruit, because from a small investment, even it can pay itself back even less than 1 year, what Silva mentioned, but it is true for many other energy efficiency projects. But notwithstanding, economics is just one of the pillars of sustainability, so we should not judge only from that, because the sizable social benefits have to be mentioned. And the final issue what I want to talk, which also came up in the Irish, the synergy potential, because it's a totally new way all through Europe to provide environmental goods and services. The way how we have, especially in urban systems, providing these critical services, water, energy, waste management, is very centralized. It's a large centralized systems which is much more expensive and much more energy intensive or resource intensive to build actually in our regions, but it became such a standard that we don't necessarily even question it. Is this really the best way? Is this really the most sustainable way? And it has many benefits, but it has also this limitation, the lack of cohesion, lack of synergy. So basically these three different, in particular, this critical infrastructure, they are running sort of parallel. And what we have shown in many of these projects, that when they consider together in synchrony with each other, we can save resources and we can have more sustainable solutions, which came up to make energy, you need water. To get water, you need energy. So it makes a lot of sense to consider these together. So in contrast with the Lille-Afro, we're going to have a more synergistic solutions, co-management of these resources. And this can be an example even to urban infrastructures to learn from some of these solutions, some of these pilots that we brought up. And we hope that all these results and all these solutions that we show is going to contribute to a more sustainable Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva. That was greatly appreciated. So just to kind of wrap up for the next 15 minutes, we want to try and inspire you all. That's the general idea. We're very conscious that European projects, they tend to last 2 years, 3 years, sometimes longer. And what we were very keen to do at the beginning of the project was to make sure that there was a lasting legacy. So there was 3 core elements, 3 core services that we wanted to develop and create throughout the project lifetime. And all 3 of them, we want to make sure that there is a life after the recent project finishes. So we've got 3 very short presentations. Aaron's going to kick off and give us a little bit of an overview of the virtual learning campus. And then Sarah is going to spend a few minutes giving an update as to the thinking behind the mentoring programme and where we've taken that up until just now. And then last but certainly not least, Silva is going to give us an update on the policy influencer programme. And then I'll just wrap it up by giving you an idea as to how all of these 3 services will continue thereafter. So if I could ask Aaron just to come up and say a few words. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So yes, I'm Aaron Carnahan from Action Renewables. Have to say, so whenever Ewan contacted me, I suppose about 18 months ago, in fact, thinking back 3 years, whenever I set out in the project, I thought I'd maybe pick up a few words of Swedish or learn a little bit of Finnish or possibly finally get a bit of Irish, you know, from this. But the only language that I've picked up after the 3 years of the project is actually computer programming. So it's been, you know, you set out, you see something 3 years ago and you see a path through it, but it changes as you go along. So thank you very much for that, Ewan. It's certainly been a learning experience for me. But yes, as I said, we've seen the pilot sites there. You know, there's a lot of good work, but coming out of that, there are 3 main models, and Ewan's mentioned them there. So we've the mentoring program, and the policy influencer program, and the virtual learning campus, which is the one that I think probably I've spent a fair majority of my time on over probably the last year or so. So looking on, I mean, what is a virtual learning campus? I suppose when you think about it, where most people would have seen it would have been through their education. People attending university would have maybe seen a virtual, you know, an online system where they could go in and get access to lectures or videos or things like that through their course that would be maybe supplementary to what they were learning in the classroom. So defined, you know, again, going back to whenever we started out, I was sort of thinking, we're starting from scratch here. We're not a university. This is very different to what I've seen before. So the definition that I found back then was a set of teaching and learning tools designed to enhance the learning experience. But, you know, I suppose I was thinking, what are people planning to learn from what we're doing? So that was the hard thing to get around, and even in meetings that we had, the definitions maybe from different countries varied as well on what we were doing. So eventually we puzzled through all that, and we got there, and we've developed sort of the campus so far, and this is what we've got. We did a lot of research looking at other campus or other things that were out there, sort of some university sites, some project sites, and this is what we've so far come up with. I'll just give you a bit of a walkthrough of what we've got so far and what potentially there is to see once we, you know, it's constantly evolving. There's a lot of material there so far. There's a lot more I know that's going on probably as we speak, and will be going on over the next few months. And then, as touched upon, once the recent project finishes, it will be taken up by LeClerc and move on there. So when you arrive in, there's two real ways of accessing the information. When you arrive in, you get to the front page, and there's this box. And there's various different boxes. You can click on these in one of those communities. So if you've a community group, we can go in through this. If you're an asset owner or you want to read about maybe some different asset owners, you can click in through here. You've got finding funding. I suspect finding funding will probably be the button that gets clicked the most. I think that will be where a lot of people from communities, from organisations, individuals will come in and look through, and there's a lot of ideas in there about things you can do. Further reading and mentoring. I won't go too much into mentoring because obviously Sarah will be looking at in the future, but just to give an example of how we've made this an interactive system. If you were to click on start, which is just an idea of where to start, you go in and we've developed a few documents there. So for example, we've an electricity decision making flow chart which takes you through the steps. If you've maybe got an idea, you go in and it asks some questions, you get yes or no answers, and it takes you down to help you decide whether or not your project may be viable. It's a very basic starting point, but it's a good way of getting involved and picking up some information. The next way of sort of seeing things is a country by country drop down along the top of the site. So if you're coming in from Sweden, for example, and you know the obvious place to start may be to click on Sweden and look at what else is happening in Sweden. But actually, the best way to do it may be to click on Northern Ireland if you're from Sweden, and that gives you what's happening in other regions. So you can click down again. You've potential opportunities. That will be updated on a case by case or as the project moves on. If there's people looking for partners or things like that, that'll be where to find that. Again, assets and asset owners, there'll be information there for those. Potential funding, again, I think this will be probably the most clicked upon section, again, country by country. Stakeholders, then contact information, and the mentoring program, again, is a key one. But I think one of the most important ones, and obviously we've touched on this a bit in looking at the pilot studies, but it'll be the case studies. And again, as you can see here, for Northern Ireland, if you're someone coming in from Sweden or Finland or even potentially outside the project area, you click on Northern Ireland, you click on the case studies, you can see that there's quite a good breakdown. There's photographs, there's some sort of descriptions, the videos that we've created, the Ewan's video that we showed there will be there and be available. As well for people to pick up some information from there. And then just finally, and I think this is probably the most important part that we've only really started to develop over the last little while. We talk about communities and the definitions of communities, but another kind of community that we maybe haven't touched on and probably could develop out of this is the online community. A lot of communities, you talk about a community, you've got a small rural community in Ireland, you've got a very sparsely populated or spacely populated community in Sweden, but online you can have communities where you have people from Sweden and from Northern Ireland who have similar interests, be it sport, be it in renewable energy, and things like that. And I think this is a massive opportunity for us to really develop something different. By building the forum, it'll encourage interaction. Yes, the various bits of information, the videos, the educational materials and all will be there, but I think this is really where we can make a big difference with this as it goes forward for the rest of recent and building into when LeClerc take over, and allowing people to ask questions, to put up a question. If you've got an idea, you pop it up there, and you've got so much knowledge out there from different countries available to respond to that and give you a bit of information. So I think there's a lot of information there, but I think this is really the key point going forward, and I think it would be I think it's a massive opportunity for us to really create something that will continue on for years after the project finishes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now ask Sarah from CLAR ICH to give us a bit of a background to the mentoring programme. Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. As Ewan explained, I work for CLAR ICH, who are Voluntary Housing Association in County Mayo, and since recent began, I've been coordinating the capacity building work package, which the mentoring programme falls under my remit. So just to start off, when we started first at the beginning of recent, we needed to identify what were the needs for the mentoring programme. So we came up with the classification system where we placed communities between pre-developed, developing and best practice. So the purpose of this exercise wasn't to discriminate against any communities. If anything, it was the opposite. It was to make sure that all types of communities at different stages, no matter where they're placed geographically, are included, and also whatever needs that they had were met. So we wanted the mentoring programme to be two-way. So we wanted the mentor and the mentee to both benefit. So just to give an example, there may be a big community, big wind farm in Finland, and we wanted them to benefit from support, maybe from a small community in the west of Ireland, just as much as a small community in the west of Ireland can benefit from the bigger community, maybe a more experienced community. So we wanted it to be two-way, and we wanted needs to be met. So all communities, no matter where you're placed or what your funding levels are or what your experiences are, you know, come through hurdles. No matter if they're technology or policy needs. So, as I said, all communities can support one another. So that was one of our key focuses, and we wanted knowledge as well to be exchanged way past the lifetime of recent. So, just a little bit about the programme. Aaron touched on the virtual learning campus, so I won't go too far into that. The midterm conference that we had last April, it was held in County Mayo in Ireland, and it was a huge success. All the recent partners flew over to it, and there were many Irish communities there, and I think if somebody would have had a bird's eye view of the day, they would have just seen mentoring happening from all angles, because there was so many different communities sharing experiences and stories and learning from all the 5 different regions within the recent project. Another example, we had a meeting last year, IRRI, CLAR ICH, Action Renewables, and they met with the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. So throughout this meeting, the SEAI went through their mentoring process and also the different tools and tricks that they have with communities, and we all just learned so much, and a great relationship was created on the day, and it's been fostered through and through. So they've, you know, been mentoring each other since May last year. So it's and it's definitely a relationship that I feel will continue past recent. Yeah. So just more examples of mentoring in practice. So as I mentioned, the SEAI, they and the Local Energy Scotland. So Local Energy Scotland are an organisation within Scotland that supports communities similar to the SEAI in Ireland. So I know that the Local Energy Scotland provided the SEAI with best practice templates, which the SEAI really appreciated, and then the SEAI are supporting Local Energy Scotland, who are in the process of creating their own mentoring programme. So it's been two-way, and it's been working very well. Back at the time of the midterm conference that was held in Ireland last year, a link was created with the Scottish Government and the National Federation of Group Water Schemes. So as Conrad mentioned, the National Federation of Group Water Schemes, they manage the group water schemes within Ireland, and private group water schemes is a very unique model that we have in Ireland. So I know that feasibility study is happening at the moment to see if the Scottish Government can see if it can be carried out, the model can be carried out and utilised within Scotland. And as Conrad said, the group water scheme model is very unique in Ireland. Throughout the mentoring programme, I noticed that the SEAI have been asking Local Energy Scotland and asking Ewan as well about his communities within recent, do they have any experience of energy cooperatives? Because it's definitely something that Ireland is in its infancy with. Whereas, you know, private water schemes or water cooperatives is something that we have a lot of experience in. So it shows that you can both be a mentor in one sense and a mentee in another. So it just kind of reinforces the two-way system that we aimed to achieve at the beginning of the project. Yeah. So one of the main examples of mentoring practice was Local Energy Scotland holds a conference every year called CARES Conference. So CARES is Community and Renewable Energy Scotland, and this conference is a great opportunity for communities to showcase the great work that they've been doing, and for Local Energy Scotland as well to showcase to communities the great work that they've been doing. And it's a great way for each communities to inspire one another and to kind of give you a bit of a drive when you leave to show, you know, they can do it, so can I. So we were fortunate enough to bring 4 community representatives from Ireland to this conference, which was just held in April of 2018. We were hoping as well to learn from the Local Energy Scotland's mentoring programme. They were hoping to learn from us rather, as they're still developing theirs. And we also saw it as an opportunity to continue the legacy of Recent forevermore. And it was a huge success, to be honest. The community representatives that travelled with me couldn't have recommended it enough. And, you know, they met some great contacts, and just similar to our midterm conference, there was mentoring happening from every section of the room, particularly in the networking sessions and the breakout sessions. So I just have a picture as well of the conference. So just to close up as well of the legacy of Recent. So as I said, the Irish and the Scottish communities, one of the ladies that travelled to Glasgow with me from Mulranny in County Mayo kept in touch with one of the ladies that she met there, and the lady is actually going to visit it. She's from the north of Scotland. She is coming to visit Mulranny in early 2019, and she wants to see how things are done there. And I know that the same lady was very inspired by the work of communities in Scotland. SEAI and Local Energy Scotland, like I said, they have a good relationship now, and it's definitely going to, you know, just develop more and more as the years go on. And as Kirsti mentioned, the virtual learning campus. So we've put a lot of work into the virtual learning campus, and it's a great resource for communities to access. There's lots of videos and articles there to access and to learn. So it's great to see that it's being transferred to another European project, and communities can just keep learning and mentoring one another way past Recent's life cycle. So if you have any other questions or anything you'd like to find out, my details are there, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sarah, very much indeed. And now pass on to Silva again, and she can tell you about the Policy Influencer Programme.
Well, when we discussed the program, I was thinking, okay, that will be tough. I mean, how to inspire people about policy influencing program. But I have to thank Michael. I'm now feeling completely relaxed because he told us everything, why to influence policymakers about renewable energy politics. Did he? Yes. But anyway, you will listen to my speech. So, our starting point was that we really didn't know. I mean, what do I care about policies, politics, if I have a local community? What do I know about European policies? How do they affect me? I don't understand it. Contradicting each other, no coherence at all, not linked to each other. And I mean, how could I influence European politics and policies as a community? No clue. And that's tough, obviously. But we tried our very best, and we did a whole lot of activities. We had policy workshops in all our regions. We developed tools, which you now can find on the virtual learning campus. We developed regional policy briefs. For example, we're exploring how policies are built, and we're here now as part of the work. Something that feels really, really important and which is underway now and the next years to come, that's the European Winter Package. And the slogan, clean energy for all Europeans, I think that's something that we all can agree on. But when it comes then to become more concrete, what does it mean for citizen and community energy? I think that's work that's really done now. And I think it's important. We heard about the local project, the pilot project, the work we have done. And I think you can't underestimate the potential of communities to produce energy and to be part of the transformation of the European energy system. And something which we also heard a lot of in all the pilot projects is it's important that we are talking about local ownership, that we are talking about how do revenues from the projects going back to the communities, and how make we the most of a renewable energy project or an energy efficiency project. So what feels really, really important? I think that's true for all energy communities in all over Europe, but maybe it's a bit more important for remote regions and regions which have these challenges, which the communities in the Northern Periphery region have. We really do need a good definition of energy community. It's a term that's used broadly, but nobody knows exactly what we mean with energy community. And I think it is important that the local ownership and the revenues for the local communities are part of the definition. Energy communities should not be excluded from support schemes, which is partly happening. But another point which I feel is really important, that's actually, that if we are talking about small-scale energy communities, we need to make sure that there is not an overwhelming administrative burden, so that actually projects like our pilot projects can be realized and implemented in many communities. And in Jokkmokk it's like this. So, for realizing these pilot projects, we want to partner with other communities in our region and in Europe. And for being able to do so, we need to have policies and politics in place which helps us to explore our local potentials. And for partnering in this work, we need to be more communities doing policy work. So we put together materials, tools for communities to start own advocacy work. And you find that on the Virtual Learning Campus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silva. And I guess just in terms of summarising, this is not the end. It might seem a strange thing to say. The recent project comes to an end at the end of August, but we have deliberately developed the services that come out of the project that have just been highlighted in the last couple of hours to be living, breathing services. So they will last long after the European funding has finished. We have communities working together, communities learning from each other, and as you see, we have a lot of practical projects on the ground. And all of them wrapped together really is the recent model going forward. So all I want to do is thank everybody here in the room, but also everybody online who's been watching live. I'd like to thank Scottish Government for hosting us here at Scotland House. And I'd like to invite those of us in the room for a glass of wine and some canapes next door, and we can continue the conversation. Thank you very much.